Okay, good afternoon. This is day 140 of making little videos to describe thoughts or day or thoughts in the life of a schizophrenic. Uh, my name is Dominic, and I make these videos to describe some amount of sanity amidst the world going crazy and warring on me. I believe that I experience schizophrenia, but I don't believe it is a disease or that I'm crazy. I believe I am subject to what is called a cognitive war, and I have written a book on medium.com where I share my thought processes, which could have gotten me targeted for this cognitive war and schizophrenia affliction. And it also describes some amount of technologies in the public domain that could have caused certain experiences of the schizophrenia experience, such as voice hearing and mind reading, weather warfare. I don't really discuss technologies for weather warfare, but in that book, but there's other books that have been written about that, and I have make these videos. On day 17, I describe why I call myself schizophrenic rather than targeted individual. On day 45, I describe why I make the videos in a 3-minute intro. And on day 138, I describe my experiences as a schizophrenic, or some of them. And so I make these videos to humanize myself amidst the stigma of mental illness and defamation of my character. Okay, so I have a little thought log that I read. And so today's thought log, first thought was about the Rudy Giuliani accident. And I guess it was in New York, or I think it's where it was. And that accident may have been staged, or someone may have attacked him, part of a trauma-based mind control that I'll get into in a second, but they try to make me responsible for things. And it's supposed to mimic me. I'm supposed to be Rudy Giuliani, and he is they call me Rudy because I was a little lineman in high school and I was tackling dummy and practice and stuff like that, and a bench warmer. And so they call me Rudy, saying you're Rudy Good from the movie Rudy, and to say I'm rude, or like rude boy and stuff. And so Rudy Giuliani staged that car accident because back in 2010, or 2011, I was subject to a couple car accident incidents where people were trying to run me off the highway and crash into me and assassinate me via vehicular assault, and I am subject to vehicular cutoffs threatening me on the highway ever since, and just to re-traumatize, I guess. And so Rudy Giuliani, he's doing that to be like, oh, you kind of make fun of me, and it's supposed to be like domestic violence incident. And actually, when I heard about it, I was like, my initial reaction is to laugh because I think like it's maybe not real. And he's in that get up and everything. But then you don't know if it's real, like the schizophrenic experience, you don't know what's real and what's not. But the accident happened to make fun of me and to make fun of me as a person, and so Giuliani's either caught in the middle or he's part of it. And so yeah, uh, let me think what else. That gets into 9/11 and all that, which I won't go into here. I've done it, I think, in other videos where I think 9/11 itself could have been. I was at the center of that operation for mind control purposes, and Saddam, who is sane. I've discussed that in previous videos a long time ago. I won't go into it now, but all right. So Rudy Giuliani, they're making fun of me and my experience, being subject to a near-death experience and car accident been out on the highway a couple times and assassination attempts or staged to threaten me with assassination attempts or stuff like that. So yeah. And then I think his son even said something like Rudy Giuliani. My dad is the toughest SOB I've ever known in my life, or something like that. And I think they're just making fun of like the whole Rudy thing. Rudy grew to good and stuff. They're making fun of me, and I'm not that tough or whatever. I don't know. So yeah, that was that. Hopefully he's not really hurt. Okay. Uh, I was gonna get into a book I read about today. Oh, the Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke and Sean Penn. They're both married to, or were married to these blonde women, Uma Thurman and Robin Wright. And Robin Wright came out and said that she wishes she would have been harder on her kids. That's a mashup, and it's supposed to be like she's this blonde woman that I'm interested in is supposed to wish she would have been harder on me, and it's kind of funny. It's crazy and it's just that's designed to trigger anger in me because I was tortured, and like, how are you gonna be harder on that someone where you destroy their life and torture them? I don't know, or totally control them in all aspects. So it's like psychopathic or whatever. But like we're living in a fascist state, and so they're got to play it up for the fascists. And so yeah, they got to be harder on me. And Ethan Hawke was because that's that. Or Sean Penn was Robin Wright, and Ethan Hawke was no Sean Penn was Uma Thurman. Ethan Hawke was Robin Wright. I don't know. I can't keep track. But Sean Penn because I'm a Penn writer, and when I was in school, they like to call me quarterback because I'm at the center of the groups doing all these things or whatever, and I'm throwing pen passes or something. I don't. It's some stupid thing. And anyways, so that's why Sean Penn, because there was a kid named Sean that was a quarterback on the high school team or whatever, and so uh, they call me Sean Penn. He's in Ukraine doing that weird potential Big Brother war in Ukraine, and yeah, so they're trying to drive me nuts with the Uma Thurman thing, and they keep this Taylor Swift thing happen where they get your hopes up, like, oh, I'm gonna get together with this woman or whatever, and then they're like, no, you are Sean Penn, and I don't know. So it's like some sort of thing they're trying to drive me nuts or confuse me and stuff. All right, I'll get into my books now. Uh, there's okay, in my book, Language Older Than Words by Derek Jensen, he was talking about an experiment on dogs and owners by Rupert Sheldrake, and the dogs could sense they the dogs would be at home alone, and no matter what time the owners left the house or the owners left work, the dog would go over to the door at that exact time. The dogs, so they were either like quantum entanglement or conscious. They had a conscious sense of their owner going to the or leaving their workplace, and the dog would go over to the door at that time, waiting for them to come home. And Rupert Sheldrake did this experiment on a number of dogs and owners, and that's what he found. And so I thought that was interesting because it's according to Jensen and people is like they're saying like this is an example of animals having consciousness, and so there's a consciousness at play with that, and so now there he's Jensen was saying that plants were having consciousness as he was writing this book, and there's some new science on that people believe that's happening, so that plants have consciousness, and so yeah. All right, so that's what I've read about today. In my David A. Hughes book, it talks about trauma and thinking death is imminent or caused by others. He talks about COVID-19 and how the whole thing was a trauma-based mind control experiment, and that they were getting us to think that our death was imminent, or they released the virus because they wanted to make us believe that death was imminent, and so we would be more malleable for trauma-based mind control. And I think that this was done for the purposes of exposing trauma-based mind control in the online media. It's like the Iraq War thing all over again. They start the Iraq War. They have the two mediums. You have the mainstream medium that's over the top. You have the online medium that victimizes Iraq. Then you have another portion of the online mediums which are talking about in book print material that's talking about revisionist history for World War II, and that all comes together to say Germany victim World War II, re-examine everything you've ever been told about your society, and nothing is good about it, and so it pushed people into fascist camps, and I believe that COVID-19 was a repeat of that kind of phase two or something. You had Donald Trump came along to usher in this fascist movement. Then you had COVID-19 was like a second phase where they shut down the world. Dr. Fauci plays the white coat, like shooting, injecting people with all this random shit, and people question it, and there's like these distinct lies going on, and it's like almost like a intelligence test or whatever, and it results in a backlash and Trump coming in this second term here, ushering in a fascism. And so that's what I think COVID-19 was. It was a mind control experiment, but it was done to expose a mind control experiment on certain ways or whatever, and people said that was authoritarianism and we have to protect against that. Now today, Florida is coming out and saying that they're not going to uh, Florida is not going to approve vaccines, or they're not going to mandate vaccines for schools. And some of that is based in, if you have this like blanket idea where you're not going to have any vaccines, uh, my thought on that, and I'm not really educated on vaccines and all that. I don't get into it, and it's just one of those things where it's like I chalk it up, and it's like I don't know a lot about it. I personally, when I go to the doctors, I avoid vaccines because my grandma was a nurse and she avoided vaccines. But I do take them on occasion if I think I need them. And so the mandate for the schools, I don't know much about, but it would seem to me that if you are trying to get rid of vaccines, or like you're you're not going to have mandates for any vaccines for school children or whatever, you're kind of practicing somewhat Darwinism, because you're like making it so like medical science could save people from diseases if we inoculate people with vaccines or whatever. And there's a little bit of a Darwinism, like, no, let people fend for themselves, let them have their bodies, and let them fend for themselves. Now, I know it's a little bit more complicated because there's vaccine injuries, there's side effects, and that kills people. So there's no real good answer to me off the top of my head in about it, but it would seem that Florida could be potentially subject to disease spread in the future, and it's probably all tied into this Nazi movement and everything. And so, they're already getting rid of the Diary of Anne Frank in Florida, and I don't know. It's all crazy, and I don't have a knowledge about it. what I do know is that Robert Kennedy shouldn't be the health secretary because he's not qualified. And so that's where I come from on it. And so, uh, yeah, so that's my thought on it. And I do think that COVID was a released virus to have a backlash for the way that there was authoritarianism and lies and manipulations, and everybody was scared and everybody was questioning authority. And that was all swallowed up by the Trump fascist move after the Iraq War, which I theorize was part of it was a multifacetation to create Germany as, or to paint Germany as a victim in World War II. And I wasn't alive during World War II. I haven't analyzed it from this new Big Brother perspective, but I think it was something as a schizophrenic. I do think a lot of people died in World War II, and it was really crazy, and we could end up there. And hopefully, these experiments going on are all designed to avoid World War III, but I don't really know. There was a lot of dirty deeds that happened in World War II, and so dirty deeds could happen in World War III nowadays in the 21st century, and it's just a lot more advanced technology, higher technology that's been around for quite some time, which includes biowar and bioelectric and all that I talk about here. And it's good to remind ourselves because the propaganda is so strong, you almost forget like, oh yeah, reality is actually something totally different than what they say. So reality is actually like this crazy shit is going on, and they're saying that it's like there's a whole alphabet of crazy shit going on, and they're just talking about crazy shit B, C, and D, So it's like, but there's actually like A through Z crazy shit going on. All right, so I was reading about debates on slavery and Theodore Parker in my Lincoln book, and Theodore Parker says that if the Bible can, there was people from the slave states arguing that the Bible did condone slavery, and that the Bible doesn't, or Bible didn't condone slave. Oh, the Bible condones slavery, and Theodore Parker was the anti-slavery or abolitionist preacher, and he said that if the Bible condones slavery, it's all the worse for the Bible. And that's kind of an interesting thing because people like to use the Bible to condone all kinds of atrocious things in our society today. And you don't hear people say that. Well, if the Bible does condone it, then all the worse for the Bible. Then I guess it's a pretty shitty book if it condones all this shitty shit. Okay, so in there they talked about a delicate balance between the slave states and the. I guess I'll get that in the next one. I don't want to talk about that right now. I don't have enough time. I'm going to stop. All right. Goodbye.